Let's see if I remember how to do this YouTube thing. Hi, and welcome to not quite the studio. This month I am again a feature artist with Royal Talons. This video is not sponsored, but they have provided me a box of goodies to play with as part of being a feature artist, and I'm going to do a long-awaited follow-up to my try and test Cobra Water-Mixable Oils video, in which today we're going to focus on glazing, so using transparent oils over the top of an underpainting. Let's get into it. Once I figured out what actual colours I had in my Cobra collection, I decided to start the painting with just a Grisalle underpainting in lamp black and titanium white. With the chalk outline on my hard panel, I simply had to mix a 25%, 50% and 75% mix between the two paints, and that meant then I could easily fill in the whole image, just finding the darkest darks, the lightest lights and the steps in between. I'm using the Cobra quick drying medium. I like my underpaintings to be nice and thinly applied so they dry reasonably fast, but the quick dry means that within about a week it's touch dry and ready to go for the next layer. I also try and avoid too much texture in this layer so that when I am doing glazing and adding detail later, it's more purposeful and I haven't got any thick bits of texture trying to poke through if I decide to change my mind on any areas or move anything in the composition. If you'd like to know more about the content of the painting, I'm doing a new body of work and I talk about it a bit more on my Instagram, so you'll feel free to go over there or ask me about it in the comments. As you can see, I haven't spent a lot of time rendering all the different areas of the face and the hands, but I've got enough information there that the Grisalle is a full roadmap of the entire painting. Okay, so this is my setup to do some testing of colours before we go forward with the finished painting. First things first, I need to use the same medium that I will be using as I paint. I'm going to be using the glazing medium. This one is fatter than the quick dry medium, and the reason I'm using a fatter medium is I want it to be really thinning down the paint, allowing it to glide smoothly. I don't mind that it'll take longer to dry. The main thing is that this layer remains really workable, so that way I can keep going and keep messing with the colour without damaging in any way how well the Grisalle continues to cure. With our test, first thing I want to do is just start with colour. Now, the theme for this month on the Royal Talons Feature Artist Program is pink. Now, some of these aren't pink, but I want things that I can mix with to create lights and darks and create some interest in the painting. So when I'm looking at each of my tubes, what I want to do is look at whether it's opaque or transparent. An open box is transparent, a half shaded box is semi-transparent, and a fully shaded box is opaque. So this one, for example, will come out straight the colour, it won't show through to the Grisalle that much, so I need to make sure if I want to use this colour it is the same value, the same light or darkness as the grey I'm painting over to make sure it's accurate to my sketch. However, if I paint with a semi-transparent, so you can see there the little half-shaded box, that one will show through some of the detail underneath, and that way I can use it very easily as a guide. Like, for example, I know this one's blue, but see the open box? This one's transparent. So this one will act almost like the effect of stained glass in that you can see completely through it, but it will just tint it a colour. So that's your guide. Some pigments you can change and alter with the glazing medium. Some pigments are really stubborn and refuse to change. So the first one I want to use is primary magenta, because I think that'll work really nicely as a pink. So here I've got my glazing medium. I forgot to mention as well, I like using the painting paste as an additional medium, just for when the glazing medium gets a bit too sloppy. This helps increase the viscosity of the paint, so the thickness of the paint, without sort of changing the fat level too much, and it also increases the transparency of the paint, the same as the glazing medium. It just doesn't feel wet. Now I've got all my colours laid out. As you can see, some of them are transparent in pigment, some are opaque, some of them are semi, and this will give me a good chance to experiment with making my pinks lighter and dark. Let's start by swatching them on white, and then we'll move to swatching them on grey, that mid-tone that we used in our Grisalle, and then also on black. So here we have a transparent versus an opaque colour. When I jump over onto the grey, you'll see the big difference that it makes. This is full strength of chroma, so if it's a solid layer of paint or if it's on a bright colour, this is how bright I'll be able to get the pink, and that's the maximum brightness I'll be able to get. If I add white, it will just make it more pastel, so if I want maximum chroma, that's where I'm going for. On the grey now, you can see it automatically dulls the chroma quite a bit. But this transparent one takes on a lot of the value of the grey that's underneath it. And as I add a little bit of medium and drag it out, it takes on even less and less chroma, and more of that grey shows through. And I know that might look a bit boring on here as a test, but that's actually quite helpful, because remember, we want to see the detail of that underpainting. Now, the opaque shows up much brighter straight away. It's keeping that strength of chroma on the grey, but you can see it's also not showing the value of the grey through it. So although this one is a bit darker, it's quite similar to the mid value. This one is quite light, and even when I add some more medium and thin it out, I can't really bring it down to be as close. So I need to remember that opaques are incredibly powerful in the underpainting, and they need to be used carefully where they're exactly the right value. They all look really nice on the bright white. They've all got beautiful chroma, high chroma, lots of intensity of colour. And then over here you can really see that one opaque compared to all the others which are semi-transparent or transparent. This one is just so loud and shouty and not showing anything through of the grey. All of these are sort of, as I fade them out, adapting to what's underneath and showing through. So that'll be really good in my underpainting. Yeah, but if I want any really bright, shouty highlights, we know where to go. And let's just do a quick test of some of my favourites of those colours with the black. You can see that when it hits the black, it's not going to do anything much chroma, it's just going to add value. Aha. So even though this is painting over the black, because the opaque is so punchy and powerful, you can see how it almost forms like clouds over the top of the black. This is what I want to avoid, because when I want a really dark value, I don't want to suddenly have detail popping through. That's now way too light in value simply because I added that colour. Meanwhile, this has maintained the relationship where I want to go from medium to dark. This has gone from medium to dark there. And I'm just going to literally do one thin scrub layer of the primary magenta so I can see it the whole way. So I really do like to start my glazing as just a colour first, so give it a bit of chroma, and then I can go over the top with the relationships and add variation and add tints to have a better relationship with the cools and the warms of the piece. Because if you just do one colour like that, it's a bit flat. It's just like you've put a colour film over the top of the artwork. It doesn't actually have the relationships of the form. So for example, actually I can do it over here with my ball. Let's start with the primary magenta over the whole thing. Over the whole ball. Just smear the edges a little bit. Okay. And what I think I want is a nice warm light hitting the ball, and then I want some cools in the shadows around the ball. But even that one tiny bit of blue and that tiny bit of bright red up there has made a big difference. What I can also do is use more broad colours. Here I've got a transparent oxide yellow. Let's bring a bit of that into the tip of the ball. See, now if this doesn't read as pink enough, what we can do is actually scrub it back and then try that opaque pink as the highlight rather than that super warm effect I got with the transparent gold. Okay, so let's scrub it back. Just a tiny bit of medium. You could use water here if you wanted, but I'm happy just to use medium. And this is the versatility of glazing. At any point, if you don't like your decisions, you just use a bit of medium, and then a bit of paper towel, and just scrub it back to where it was. So that looks really nice and bright, but still maintains that really pink colour. And this is also where I could introduce a white if I wanted to. I'm trying to avoid white for as long as possible. That's something I do in my painting practice, just to keep the colours vibrant. Still probably a little bit more purple than pink. Maybe I need to use more of the reds, but that's the idea. One other thing I wanted to mention was this is a newer product by Cobra. This is called Medium Mix, and what it does is you add it to traditional oil paints that are not water mixable, and it turns them into water mixable paint. I've got one of my Holbein Quinacridone Opera colours, which is a very transparent, very luminous pink, and it's one that isn't in the Cobra range. And this is the best thing about the medium mix, is the fact that if you already have a whole bunch of existing oils, you can use them in a water mixable way. You can see there how just one little bit of colour, and you can see all those values have been preserved simply through how thick the paint is. I've kept it nice and thin so that you can see all that difference. And what I did there was I locked everything in with this little brush I was using before, this little fill bit. I realised the texture wasn't happening, so I just brought in a dry, super cheapy, soft tack-on brush, and I just swept that over the top really gently to even out all that texture. So I'm not looking at creating brush strokes here. Any brush strokes and texture I will do last to reinforce the important areas of the figure. Alright, that's a start. You'll notice as I paint here that I'm working around the figure in sections. The reason that I do this is so I can really control not only the colour that I'm using, but the application. Each time I go through an area, I really decide, am I going to integrate any other colours? As I work down the body, you'll see I start integrating more of those blues and purples, so that way I really have the pink diminish and it sort of fade away as I want the body to sort of fade away, and the hands come forward. They're much stronger with the pink. I try and make sure that my colours are really sort of reflecting that temperature shift that I want. I want where the high point of the light is to be more pink and warm, and where the shadows come in, I want it to be more cool and blue. This is the whole first glaze the whole way around. And from here, because it's wet, I can start working into it with other colours and other pigments to really create those little shifts. From here again, I'm still using my bristle brush to apply paint, but I'm using a larger collection of small dry brushes, a small point and a small fluffy brush to just help finesse some of the shapes and the blends. I'm really trying to focus on keeping some soft edges through all the hair there and through the skin as well. So the sharp edges are isolated to the center of the figure where that transparent piece of paper is being held in the hand, so that'll be really sharply in focus. My figure does have a key light on the shadow side of the body, so I'm trying to preserve just those few little hits of bright light on the nose, the temple and the shoulder, and later I can punch those up even more by using that really fluorescent quinacridone opera. From here I did have to work in a few more smaller sessions of painting just because toddlers. So you will notice the lighting changing from daytime to nighttime, but the main thing is just whenever you can pick up some little time to paint, just do it. If you've got something always on the go on the easel, I find that the easiest way to keep going with projects, rather than sitting there waiting for the perfect time to paint or when everything is perfectly set out and I've got a long day to do it. I've definitely changed a lot of my workflow since having my little girl, so yeah, I think you'll notice that in forward videos that I'm going to be doing a lot more of tiny little bits of painting wherever I can in my time lapses. And now we're ready for that really punchy quinacridone opera. Wow, what a difference that makes. In person it's definitely a lot more pink, it's coming up a little bit orange on the camera, but it's just luminous, completely neon, which is so cool, just to add that final hit to the painting. There she is! So this ended up being about 3 layers of glaze. I definitely could push this further, but let's talk about using water. We haven't done that yet. Let's rinse off my brush and test that. So my brush is quite saturated. What I normally do is wipe off as much as I can on my paper towel first. Let my brush sway a little bit. There we go. And then wash in the water. Pretty cool. You can see that does take out almost all of the colour. As with all oil paints with really nice pigments, you will experience some staining on your brushes, and that's when it's nice to use a brush soap now and then to get the staining out. So let's have a look at that. Not bad. Sorry, my Cobra brush soap got stuck to a piece of paper towel. If I just dip my brush in the water, run it over the soap, let it get a bit of a lather. Squish, 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 squish. Squish, 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 squish. You can definitely use those silicone brush cleaning mats that just have little knobbles and designs on, just to get the guts out of the brush. Oh, look at that. Barely any pink at all left in the brush. One more go. And of course I should be rinsing this in clean water for the last time, so at the end of my painting session I'll clean them all with just replacing this last rinse as with clean water. She's beautiful! There she is. Beautiful and clean! This is why we love water-mixable oils! Wash out in water! And the last little cleanup thing I wanted to show was just how I clean up my palette at the start of each paint session. I really should clean it at the end of each paint session, but sometimes I'm not that organised. I just use a water mist spray bottle and block the blobs and my actual painting with a piece of paper. Once it's sort of sat for a little while, the paint lifts really easily with my little scraper. So yeah, that was just my last little hack that I really enjoy with the Cobra oils. I just wanted to say a huge thank you if you've made it this far into the video. This has been such a huge topic that's been on my mind ever since I made the first try and test video, which you haven't seen. Please go have a look at that one. I'll link it below. And thank you so much for watching. It's so nice to be back in the studio. Don't forget to wash your brushes. Bye. Let's see if I remember how to do this YouTube thing.